Welcome back to Fade to Chat, Golden Age Cinema. And I'm with co-host Cindy Rotz, who is just a wonderful co-host because she kind of delves into some interesting aspects of the films that I don't think about. And she has a great eye and a great catch for this. So I feel like I don't have to work as hard when Cindy's around. Because there's always going to be good content in the podcast with Cindy. And today we are covering Bridge on the River Kwai from 1957, the year of my birth. And it was a film that I kind of put out there. And I had some things going for it. First, I had convinced you to watch an even longer film by David Lean called Lawrence of Arabia, and you wound up enjoying that. And there are probably elements that you can see this is definitely a David Lean film, by the way the cinematography is in it. But I also know it's kind of a war film and a concentration camp film, and that's not your genre. Not concentration, prisoner of war camp. And that's not a feel-good movie necessarily. But the idea of taking this film, which is, I think, 2 hours and 42 minutes, something like that, and seeing if it can sustain a narrative arc for that long, where, are there places where we really don't need to see this? Things like that in terms of the storyline. I thought this would be an interesting challenge for you. So I put that forward. Now, we have not conversed before this show other than to determine what's coming next. And we'll talk about what movie we're going to cover in our next episode. That's your choice, your pick. So I'm just going to ask you general impressions.
Well, general impressions are, it's a good movie.
Okay.
I have to say I liked Lawrence of Arabia better, even
All
though
right.
it was almost twice as long. And I looked to see who the cinematographer was with both of them, because the director was the same, David Lean, but the cinematographer was Jacques Hildyard with River Kwai, and Lawrence of Arabia, it was Freddie Young. And
Okay.
it made a difference for me. Even though this movie was in color, there were parts of it that almost seemed black and white. And one particular in sepia toned, I noticed, almost like, like the sepia tone. The one when he was, when I say he, I'm referring to William Holden as Shears, Colonel Shears. He was crawling on the rocks after he had escaped. That scene really struck me, even though it was, kind of tragic, that he had, he was in such rough shape and all. It was beautifully photographed. And I thought I shouldn't even be thinking that at the time, but that is what struck me was the texture and the color of the stones and the rocks and him crawling along it. Everything was like brown and tan and sepia toned. It was beautifully photographed.
Yeah.
And I found myself paying more attention to that. But the overall, and there were certain scenes, like some nighttime scenes, the color was so unsaturated, I guess you would say. It was beautiful. And I almost felt like I was watching a black and white film, which I do enjoy. So it wasn't like a lush, gorgeous, beautiful, like jungle, which I kind of thought it was going to be. To me, it was almost like watching a black and white movie.
Yeah. Let me nerd out on the night scenes, because I think I mentioned in like a previous film review that we did, and I checked this because and you'll get an eye for this. You might have an eye for it now and you don't know it. There is this process called day for night, or when I learned it, it was definite or definite filters. And it really is a
Okay.
way that cinematographers can shoot in during the day and by using filters make it appear as if it's night. But there are some dead giveaways. Some of the giveaways are long casting, really well-defined shadows that you'd get in the sunlight, but you would not get necessarily in moonlight. There's also a sort of a dark metallic, what you might say is more of a black and white feel to it. There's a
Yes.
higher contrast to it, so things seem like things are a little over crisp. That all happens as part of trying to take day photography, which was quite readily done back then. Maybe not so much now, but back then these day for night filters that they would put on it would generate this kind of look. So what you see in the river scenes where they're laying the explosive, that's all day for night or day for night filters.
Interesting. Okay. Okay,
and-
it explains it then.
Yeah. Now, as we look at more movies in this time period in the future, you'll be able to pick it out really quickly. That this was shot during the day, but it was using filters to make it look like night. So that was something I remember when I was watching it. I'm like that, and then I went and checked it. I was like, were the river scenes done with a day for night filter process? And the information I got back was yes. So good eye, really good eye. Cindy, that's what I said. You have a really good eye for this stuff.
Thank you. And thank you for explaining that, because now I learned something new.
Well, one of the things that I picked up in my training was about these. And once you see it, and once you know what it is when you see it, you wind up looking at films of that time and of that genre. And you're like, yeah, this was shot during the day with filters on it. So any other impressions to start with, and then we'll kind of go through some of the film details.
Yeah, I kind of broke it down into, for me, I broke it down into favorite scenes, least favorite, or I'm going to say worst scene. There was one that was particularly dramatic, and then I had a favorite character, a least favorite character, and then one part that kind of just made me smile.
Okay.
So I just broke it down into very small sections.
Don't hold back. Give us a little bit on these one or more of these sections of things that you were your favorite, least favorite, interesting things
Okay.
that you picked up.
Well, my favorite scene, it had to be when the Colonel, William Holden, when he was
Yeah.
finally released from the oven. I hated, that was also my worst scene, when he was put into the oven. When he was finally released and he was having the conversation with Colonel, is it Saito? How do you say that?
Saito.
Saito.
Yeah.
And he was told that they could return to their quarters, and they released the officers from their punishment camp or hut as well. And they all the other, I'll call them prisoners because they were,
Right.
they all came rushing out. They came rushing out from the hospital. They came rushing out from the camp and just cheering and just congratulating him. And it's like, oh, such a relief that everyone was safe. And, he greeted them as they came out, and everyone was happy and singing. And then meanwhile, the other
Yeah.
colonel realized, oh, he's got one up over me, and he's in his little hut or whatever, and he is sobbing.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite scene, that they finally got one over, and the men were hopefully going to be okay, and they had made some progress against this terrible person.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought I have suggested this film for Cindy to watch. And I thought, okay, this is the story narrative that I think she's going to enjoy, that she's going to see this relationship that they have and the sense of competition between them and appreciate the way this was done. Everybody running up and surrounding him and cheering, cheering Alec Guinness in, and that he had survived it. It kind of reminds me of scenes from Lawrence of Arabia, because there were times where everybody. So there's some tropes that I think David Lean does throughout his films, and that one of grandeur, great people coming around, surrounding and supporting someone who's had to endure something terrible or difficult is part of his way of talking about humanity and such. I've got to say my favorite scene, and I can watch it over and over, and we'll spend more time with it, is the final scene, which most of it's done in silence. There's very little dialogue. All you hear in the background is the train whistle getting louder and louder as it's approaching. That whole just shot by shot for me is kind of an amazing thing to look at. And it's sort of the thing that when people mention this movie and they're doing it in a documentary or talking about movies, you always see the scene of Alec Guinness with his head kind of dazed out, or you see him falling or have fallen on the plunger at the end. I always look for that as a favorite scene. I appreciated the scene that you described as one of your favorite scenes too, because I think it really generates the narrative. We'll get to the truth and the trivia about each of these characters and where they came from in a bit. Okay, least favorite scene.
Oh gosh, the worst for me. Again, it was when they were. I wrote down two. When the three men tried to escape, and two of them were shot, and of course, the third one,
Holden, William Holden.
Holden, thank you. He survived. But when they brought those dead men back, and they were tied to the poles like animals, strung up on those. Oh, that just bothered me terribly. Seeing them carried like that, and they were swinging back and forth, and they were just tied up like animals.
Yeah.
Hated that.
Yeah.
Hated that. And of course, when the colonel was first put into the oven, and they referred to it as the oven, of course, it reminded me of like the Holocaust. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a horrible, horrible thing to do to a person. And then when they closed him in there and they put those big like wooden
wedges,
logs, and they pounded them in there, and I thought, oh my God, how long are they going to leave him in there? That that was brutal. Yeah.
One of the things that, as you're speaking about this, I think about his transition, and if you watch the film, he is like, we have to fight. We're going to show them that we're going to stick to our rules and stick to our guns. Even when the one doctor is let in to see him while he's in the box, while he's in the oven,
clipped him.
He's still asking questions about the men. He's asking questions about how are the other officers doing. He's still kind of is seeing himself as a leader that is in opposition to the Japanese and trying to maintain order, even though he's locked in a box. And this time when I watched the film, I watched it for that character transition, because I kind of knew for one scene, the other podcast that's attached to this, I was going to cover that final scene. So I really wanted to know about the transition and what have I done? That statement, what have I done? So the realization that he had made this kind of personal transformation. And you can
Yeah.
see it in if you pay attention to the dialogue and how he relates to other characters in the film as he and the bridge progresses. So
Yeah. And I noticed when he was finally let out and, he could barely walk, from being in there for however many days it was, they said that, he was staggering and they were holding him up and, he was tripping and falling, and that he had based his staggering walk on his son, Matthew, who was recovering from polio.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, an
But
interesting
I
piece of
noticed,
tribute.
yeah, yeah, and he thought that was his, finest piece of acting. I would agree with that. And I noticed too, when he went in to talk to Saito, and
Yeah,
he was all disheveled, his coat was open, and he was just a mess. And he went in and talked to him, and he held his ground. And then Saito said, "Well, I'm not going to have your men build the bridge. I'm not going to have the officers do that." When he After he said that, he stood up very tall and he buttoned up his jacket
yeah,
before he walked out. And I thought
yeah,
that was the change right there. You could see the change in him.
yeah,
Even though he was still
and
very weak, he wanted to appear strong.
right, yeah. Some wonderful acting by Alec Guinness in this movie,
Hmm.
although he came to
Yeah.
odds with David Lean in terms of how this should be done
Hmm.
and how this character should be managed, and with that, and he wanted to take a more kind of lighthearted, humorous, and David Lean insisted that he needs to keep his stiff British upper lip through the
Hmm.
process, and Guinness didn't like that, and eventually he lost in that discussion or that
Yeah.
piece. So
We our last movie that we did with
yeah,
Charles Lawton, they
yeah.
said that he was actually a choice for this movie, and I thought, I cannot see that at all.
I
Can you?
not with his girth and not with his
No.
yeah, he was original choice. And it could have been David's Lean's preference for actors and
Hmm.
what he wanted. And I think Lawton figured out what you're going to put me in the heat of Ceylon or Sri Lanka
Hmm.
for so many weeks. That's not where I'm going to have a good time. And he kind of said Alec Guinness did this right. He would not have been able to do this right. I think Charles
Hmm.
Lawton is a marvelous actor, but this would not have been a right role for him. Also,
Yeah,
Laurence
I agree.
Olivier. I think Laurence Olivier could have done this role.
Hmm.
He would have been able to pull it off and pull it off. He's an excellent actor, but I find it interesting that he turned down the movie role because he was going to direct, and he was going to
Hmm.
direct The Prince and the Showgirl. Have you ever seen The Prince and the Showgirl? It
No.
is a dog of a movie, and
Oh,
it's maybe
really?
not his. It's not his direction. It's just the story is horrible. Yeah, if
Huh.
Marilyn Monroe plays, of
Marilyn
course, a
Monroe.
showgirl, and he's a foreign prince who, they he has a thing for Marilyn Monroe,
Of
and
course, of course.
it's just kind of wacky. It's not even funny wacky. It's not like Doris Day wacky.
Hmm.
It just doesn't kick. But I think it was Olivier's chance to direct that got him attached to that project. And he, of course, played the lead in it. I think kind of old, um, or he appeared as an older prince. And so there was this generational gap between him and Marilyn Monroe that didn't work out well on the screen
Hmm.
in terms of it. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think it was kind of that was a dog of a movie when I saw that, and then saw that he turned it down so he could direct The Prince and the Showgirl. My guess is he might have regretted that decision,
I,
but apparently
I've
not.
never even heard of that movie.
Oh, it
Never
shows
heard of
up
it.
occasionally on TCM,
Hmm.
and he also did not want to tough it out in the Ceylon jungle where
Yeah.
this was done. Spencer Tracy was approached. No,
Hmm.
Spencer Tracy
Nope.
could not do this with and I don't think he would attempt to do it with a British accent. He would just do Spencer Tracy. And
Yeah.
he stepped out of it because he was like, no, this has to go to an Englishman to do this role.
Englishman. Right. Right.
Some casting choices for the William Holden role. Shears. Humphrey Bogart. Mm,
No.
there's too much typecast into his approach that
Exactly. Yeah.
I would say I couldn't see him in that role.
No.
Harry Cohn wouldn't release him, Humphrey Bogart, from his contract to be able to do it, so that kind of nixed that. But one of your favorites, Cary Grant,
Cary Grant. Yeah.
was considered.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, do you think Cary Grant could play
Uh,
an American officer
no.
the way Holden was able to do it?
I no. I don't think so. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
say, Cary Grant. The closest I've ever seen him be an officer was on Operation Petticoat. He was in a submarine.
Yeah, but he was still quite clearly Cary Grant and quite
Yeah,
clearly British, not an
exactly.
American William Holden. One of the movies we have talked about, maybe we'll get to it sometime in the future, was Sunset Boulevard, directed by Billy Wilder. And I'll tell you, I can appreciate William Holden's acting ability in both that film and this film. My recollection of it when I saw it the first time was he's just kind of a cocky, one dimensional American in the film. But this time I kind of appreciated his nuance in what he did with the role.
Hmm.
And as someone who's kind of trapped between what he knows his duty is got to be and the fact that he's trying to avoid any risk to his life by taking on the role of a colonel. When the colonel in his unit dies, he puts his clothes on and he figured he'd be
Hmm.
treated better and what would have been treated better as a officer than just a regular Navy. I
Right.
believe it was Navy he was with.
Yeah.
So I could appreciate his acting in that role and landing that job and landing that part as Colonel Shears. He also wisely got 10% of the gross
Hmm.
paid out over years, which meant that followed with interest. So he made a really good deal on this movie. I
Hmm.
think the gross was something around 34 million. It was made for like 3, so
Wow.
he did really well
He
with this
did well.
film.
Yeah.
Sessue, I also appreciated Sessue Hayakawa, Colonel Saito, and I watched his acting. I mean, the scene that you described of him breaking down,
Hmm.
the interaction with Alec Guinness. He, I think, did a marvelous job. His English was not very good, so he kind of had to memorize his lines phonetically in terms of response. And just his interplay with Alec Guinness, Nicholson, and that character. I really in some ways I paid less attention. I paid more attention to the acting, I think, this time in this watch that I did, and could really appreciate the acting. But particularly Sessue Hayakawa, who was nominated but didn't win in the supporting role piece, but claims it was nominated for an Academy Award, was the high point of his life and his acting career. So.
And another interesting point of trivia was that he didn't know the final ending of the movie, that he only kept the script pages containing his own lines and he tore out the rest. So he really didn't know what was going to happen at the very end.
Yeah, and I wonder what that was about. An actor might say, I only want to be in my role when I'm in my role. I don't want to know what happens outside of my role. And that might protect him from, or protect an actor from acting the end solution when really they're in the middle of the movie, or in the middle of the narrative. They have not gotten to that realization yet. So it could be that. It could be because of his difficulty with English language translation, that he's like, I just need these pages. Those are the pages I need, and I need to focus on that in terms of it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole writing of this, written by two writers who were caught up in the, they were exiled in England because they were caught up in the Red Scare that Hollywood had, and were banned from writing. There's really some good movies about that tell that whole story. Trumbo is one of them. And, contemporary movies, and well acted, that you start to see all of these writers that were famous names that were banned during the Red Scare. But apparently Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson worked on the script in England, and they couldn't be credited at the time. So Pierre Boulle wrote the source material and basically got the credit. Didn't speak English, which is interesting, but wound up getting originally the full credit for the storyline. It was based on some of his experiences in concentration camps, prisoner of war camps, and POW camps in Thailand, I guess, during the First World War, I think, that he was involved in. And what other movie is he famous for, or story is he famous for writing? Do you remember this? Planet of the Apes.
Oh, gosh.
He wrote the original treatment for Planet of the Apes. It was written in French and all of that, but then it became so Bridge on the River Kwai and Planet of the Apes. I went and I did some diving in to find out what else he might have been involved in, but nothing other than those two films.
You're right. And that was 1968.
Yeah. So quite 11 years later. The treatment for this was written in the early 50s, I think, and then turned into the film in 57. And then you have this gap before Boulle's writing comes out again in Planet of the Apes. The Academy did correct this, and this gave screenplay credits for Foreman and Wilson. They did it, however, in 1984. Wilson had died and Foreman had just passed away. And I think I'll have to go back and watch the film credits at the beginning to see if they are mentioned now or the credits were redone to reflect that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Hey, what did you think of the bridge blowing up?
Oh, that was great. And it was a
Yeah.
real bridge.
Yeah, that was my point in asking the question.
Yeah. Yeah, it
CGI
was.
wasn't available at the time, obviously, so they couldn't do it in CGI. Something like that might be CGI generated if it was
Hmm.
done today. They didn't want to do a model. And if you have a good eye, you can see, oh, that's a model. That's not
Hmm.
a real bridge. It's a smaller version that they're shooting to give the impression. They did a real bridge,
Real
which was,
bridge.
and they used a real train that they had
Hmm.
bought, a train that was out of commission. So the bridge and the train got destroyed in
Yeah.
one shot.
Yeah. One shot.
Well, I can only imagine that they had cameras placed all over in order to capture and run it. And then most of the stuff wound up on the editing floor just in case something didn't go right
Yeah.
in with the camera or camera angles. They must have had that well done. Apparently, that scene, they were going to have dignitaries come out and watch the
Hmm.
explosion, and they got delayed in coming out, so they
Right.
held off the explosion and the scene until the next day.
Next morning. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I say something about that scene without giving away the movie?
Oh, you can. Yeah, I think
Oh,
our listeners
we're
are
good.
we're good.
Okay, because I kept hearing that train whistle in the distance. And
Yeah,
of course I'm getting nervous because I know what they're planning on doing. And I'm thinking, okay, they're all walking up on this bridge. And I was thinking, and I was wrong, but I was thinking that they were going to be on the bridge at the
yeah,
time it got blown up. And I was getting more and more and more nervous, like, get off that bridge, get off that bridge, you've got to get off that bridge. Because the train's
yeah.
getting closer and closer. Of course, it didn't matter that they got off the bridge, but that was my concern in the beginning. Like, oh my God, that train is coming and they're on that bridge, and you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and all of the people that were on the bridge abandoned it to search for whoever was
Yeah,
trying to blow
yeah,
up the bridge at the
right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it cost $250,000 to build and construct. They said before they even had hired a single actor that they had made that commitment to the movie.
I did a little deep dive on a couple of things. Since the previous movie that we did had cigars involved,
Yes.
there's the scene where Saito is trying to convince Nicholson of his ways, and he offers him food, offers him
Mhm.
drink, and
Drink.
Nicholson refuses, and then finally offers him cigars. A really good, clean shot of the cigar box. And on the side was written 50 Coronas. And
Okay.
so the pattern, the kind of checkered pattern that was a bordering around the top and the bottom of the box is kind of easily identifiable. He even turns the box to the point where you can see the lid and see what design is on the lid. I
Did you
was, I,
pause the TV to check it?
oh yeah, yeah, sure I did. I single framed it through some of it to see if I could, but for the life of me, I could not find, 50 Coronas. That's pretty identifiable if you're printing it on
Mm-hmm.
the outside of a cigar box. It was a paper cardboard box. It wasn't a cedar box like they at times used to make at that time with the little flip
Mm-hmm.
over latch on it.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't a slide cover box. So it was quite obvious a pressed cardboard. And so I was trying to find out what brand it was, and I basically got stuck. I could not figure it out. There was lots of information about different types of boxes in the 50s, cigars that could have come from London that were Corona, that had 50 Coronas on it or had Corona on the box. But when I looked at images of those boxes, none of them looked like the image that was in the film. And one that they said was probably what was used, the image on the top of it looked nothing like, or the image that they gave for that brand looked nothing like the image that was on the top, which to me kind of looked like a Toro Fuente, but I don't think that that I could find anything related to that brand of cigars. And Coronas, I started thinking about Panatellas and other types of cigars, but that was not the case back in those days. So that pathway went astray. The other thing I tried to do, and I don't know if you did this in this case, but I was really curious to find out where the scene was shot. And so I recalled that they were trying to build a railway from, I think, Ceylon to Bangkok.
Bangkok, yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and following basically the route of that river, I went to Google Maps or Apple Maps and got to that portion of the country and tried to look for the river that it would have been built on. And sure enough, if you zoom in certain areas, this whole movie was shot in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka.
Right.
It wasn't shot necessarily in its original written location or scripted location. But all along, if you zoom in, there are all these River Kwai groceries, River Kwai,
Really?
hotels. It is so loaded with touristy stuff along that route that I just found it interesting.
Wow.
That is and when you look at that region and information about the region, that is the tourist trade for that region. So they kind of build it up,
Sure.
as a tourist attraction. They even renamed a portion of the river to match that they actually shot the bridge scene on to a River Kwai, or it's the pronunciation is not clean Kwai, but it's a 2-3 syllable reference that you can see Kwai in it. So yeah. I went there,
funny.
and then there are some Facebook pages of pictures of people pointing and going, like, over there. And in the background, that's apparently where they said the bridge was that they blew up, because that was blown up in a different location than where they actually shot the prisoner of war camp. That was in a separate location from where the bridge was. So yeah, I kind of geeked out on that whole area and probably know 100 times what I know of that area that I knew before that area, which was zero, about the movie, that area, the impact, where different scenes were shot and things like that. It was kind of a fun trip for me on that part of the world.
Well, good. I did not do that. No.
There were some interesting comments that I read in some of the trivia.
Okay.
Steven Spielberg shot parts of Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, one of the major movie downers in the Indiana Jones thing, in some of the same areas and locations. And he said this was my favorite movie, Bridge on the River Kwai. So it was kind of fun for him to return to that area and do that. The actors and the people that they were representing, and apparently there were real life, although this is based on real life experiences, it's not a true story in the sense that there wasn't a bridge that was blown up, etc.,
Right.
etc. But the characters as depicted in the film were kind of the opposite of what these characters were in real life, particularly Guinness's role of Nicholson. In real life, he was like, let's sabotage, let's blow things up, let's do everything we
Right.
can to do resistance. And so that was a kind of shift from the real experience to the narrative. And the other one was Saito.
Saito. Yeah.
He was remembered by former prisoners as an unusually fair kind of prisoner of war camp person. And actually, the character that would have been Nicholson's character later testified on his behalf during his war crimes trial, and that probably kept him from being executed. So interesting kind of shift in real versus movie characters with that.
Yeah. Speaking of characters, I tried to think about who was my favorite character in the movie. And for me, it was the doctor, Clifton.
Oh, yeah.
Not because of his acting, but because of what he stood for
Yeah, he was sort
and
of the
how
moral. Yeah,
he was the moral.
he was the moral ego of the film. Whereas Nicholson kind of went off and lost his identity in his role, and
Yeah.
the character that William Holden played, Shears, was not necessarily, he was not free of violating ethics and code and such
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even and we Jack Hawkins, I thought did a wonderful job again of acting, but his character was not free of moral losses and issues
No.
in terms of what he did and what he had done.
No.
Maybe the young soldier that comes with him, probably another
Yes.
person that's kind of acting and with shows signs of moral conflict when he can't immediately kill that Japanese soldier that he runs across
Yeah.
in the jungle. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions in terms of morality in this. But I agree. Shears was probably or not Shears, the doctor. You remember his name?
Clifton.
Clifton. Yeah, he was probably
Clifton.
sort of
It was James Donald.
yeah, he was probably the moral center of the film.
Center.
He was kind of the Greek chorus of what was going on in terms of madness.
Madness.
Uh,
Yeah.
And that's
That was.
like one of my favorite lines.
Yeah, I knew that. It was said several times throughout the movie, but yeah, kind of sums up the whole movie, really. It was madness.
Yeah, well, it's a reflection on war and conflict, I think, and what happens to people when they're caught up in that. So, any other things that you want to add in? I think you said a bunch of like characters I like, characters I didn't like, scenes I liked, scenes I didn't like. Was there anything else in your notes?
Yeah, I have two more.
Okay.
Dramatic scene, and this was when they were escaping again, and William Holden, who was Shears, he was shot, if you remember that, and he was shot in the air, and he
Right.
dropped into the river. And I watched that back a couple of times because they showed him, he had his arms stretched out, and it just looked like, to me, as if like Jesus on a cross. And I wonder if they did that on purpose. And then, of course, and when he dropped into the river, I thought, well, he's not going to die. Those other two
Yeah.
died. I thought that it just somehow, and I'm not even, I hate to say I'm not a religious person, but it just struck me as like a symbol, a
Yeah.
symbolic moment of him in that position and dropping into the river, and then he came back and survived. That to me was kind of a dramatic moment.
They did, and again, this was another scene that was shot with day for night. Um,
Okay.
you can tell from that. But Lean made a directed decision to spend a lot of time following the river after that scene.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, okay, he's in the river, cut.
Yeah.
No, instead, he spends time kind of moving us down the river. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
indiscriminate. You can't see whether William Holden is bobbing or not bobbing through the river
No.
in portions like that. So it kind of, you, if in viewing it, you kind of get the relief of, well, he must have survived because why would they follow the
Yeah.
river that long for that period of time? And then you see some arduous stuff that he's crawling and he's trying to, he gets on a boat and he's, dehydrated and with no
Mm-hmm.
energy. And there's just also, and he's drifting out to what might have been the ocean. If you look at it, the one scene where the boat's there at the mouth of
Mm-hmm.
whatever the inlet is, and then you see nothing but water outside of there. So, yeah, interesting observation about his hands outstretched and sort of the Christ like image
Mm-hmm.
or potential Christ like imagery of that.
Yeah. So one point of just very subtle, I'm sure you
Mhm.
saw it, comedy. They were in Saito's hut and he was talking to someone, I don't remember, and they were pointing at the calendar and talking about when this bridge had to be finished. It had to
Yeah,
be finished, I think, 12th. Well, they were looking at the calendar and it was like a pinup calendar, the girl. And
right.
they started in March. And a real pretty girl, and she was fully dressed. She had on a red and white striped top and a skirt and high heels and stockings. She was really pretty in a pose. Then they flipped to April, and she didn't have a blouse on in April. Oh no, no, she did. She had the blouse on, but they had removed the skirt, and she
Uh-huh.
just had stockings and a garter belt and high heels. Then they flipped to May, and suddenly she was just in a bathing suit. Did
You
you miss
know,
that?
you have a dirty little mind. Because
How
I
did you
didn't
miss?
catch
You
that at
missed
all.
that?
And I said at the
Oh
beginning of
my
the
gosh.
episode, you have this eye for detail. And no, I did not catch that at all.
Oh
I
my
did see
gosh.
the calendar. I did see that it was kind of a pin-up-ishy calendar. And
It was
my
almost like
first,
a flip chart where
yeah,
you
yeah,
flip through and it's like it changes like in a cartoon. Her
yeah.
dress got less and less in a bathing
But
suit.
my question was, how did he get the calendar? How do you, in a Japanese POW camp,
I
get
don't
an
know.
obvious kind of American or British
Yeah.
made calendar with a pinup girl in it? You know?
Well, in your defense, Marty, because you don't see the colors, it was red and white. And it stood out like a sore thumb. So maybe that's why you didn't notice it.
Well, red and white would have been indicative of the Japanese flag. Um,
Yes.
so, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't looking for what's she wearing in April like apparently you were. Uh,
Well, it was just, I thought to myself, did it, what, what? All of a sudden she's got a bathing suit on. She didn't have a bathing suit on before. Maybe it's just a girl thing. So I went back and I watched it again. I'm like, nope. And they went through 3 months and it changed each month.
yeah. The scene that kind of, I don't know, and it's me, makes me uncomfortable is all the guys get together at the night before the bridge is going to be crossed and basically
Hmm.
put on a drag show. Not that I have an issue with you know
Yeah.
not that I have an issue with drag. It just seems really kind of weird in a prisoner of war camp
Hmm.
that they're cutting coconuts in half and making bras out of them for them to wear with grass
Yeah.
skirts, and there's a lot of it just, that scene. I think it's supposed to add some levity at that point, and it's supposed to add some joy that this has been work well done. I
Hmm.
don't know. It was just, and I knew that was coming. I'd seen it before, and it was just different for me to. It seemed kind of out of place from the seriousness because they're cutting from that to guys laying wire to blow up the bridge. And they're
Right.
going back and forth between those two and people walking, guards walking on the bridge. And so it was just kind of a weird, maybe
Hmm.
intentional place to put that kind of shift in the storyline. Let's go to our official movie critic, Brian, who watched the movie, and I got this email from him yesterday. Hey, Cindy and Marty, I just finished watching the film Bridge on the River Kwai and enjoyed it. When I originally saw the runtime, I thought that there would be a ton of filler. So many action movies in modern times, for some reason, feel the need to run longer run times, perhaps to convince moviegoers that they are getting their money's worth, but would benefit, in my opinion, from shorter films. But this one felt like it told the story and not anything more in that long runtime. So he didn't see it as a
Hmm.
filler. I enjoyed the characters and their perspectives as it related to duty and self-worth. So that's Brian's take on it.
Good.
And thanks for sending that in, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Any
He's
other
watched all our
pieces?
movies, I think.
I
Has
know.
he
Yeah,
missed
and I think
any?
we've and I don't think so. And we have some other people who are keeping lists of them, like Dave Ginsburg keeps lists of
Oh,
them.
is
And if
he?
he doesn't have them, he goes to a Usenet site and downloads them and is
Oh,
creating a collection of them, some of which he's
good.
watched and some of which he hasn't watched yet. So that's always fun to hear.
Hmm.
Any last pieces before you talk about the film we are going to see next?
Well, I can't go without talking about the tune that they whistled.
Okay.
I recognized the tune, but I didn't know what it was.
Uh huh.
The Colonel Bogey March
Oh,
is what
okay.
I read. Colonel Bogey March. It was written in 1914 by a British Army bandmaster, Lieutenant Ricketts, but it was under his pen name, Ken Alford. And they sang that or whistled that tune to show solidarity amongst themselves. But apparently, in history, they had some very inappropriate lyrics that went along to that tune relating to the Nazi leaders, and they weren't allowed to do that during the movie, so they changed it to whistling. And it also helped them keep their marching in order because they were
Yeah.
having trouble keeping in unison.
Yeah. The other pieces, I noticed that. Of course, it's. I think when I was in Boy Scouts, actually, and we had to stand in line at attention,
Hmm.
I started whistling that, and a few people picked up on it. Of course, that was me.
Yeah,
A few people picked up on it, and they told me to knock it off. But in
right.
this film, it's used so often it can get a little irritating. But it generally
Hmm.
builds into a full orchestrated version of it, and then
Yes.
the whistling is just the beginning of the melody, and then it bridges into something that's much fuller as an
Yes.
orchestra, which is pretty
Yes.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't, and I said we would talk about this, and we're running long, but let's talk about it anyways. The final scene. When Alec Guinness notices something's wrong and starts to chase down and find the wire that's used to hook up all the explosives. Actually can see the plastic explosives because the water level had fallen overnight.
Had dropped overnight.
Yeah. Again, an iconic series of maybe 7 minutes where it goes from his quiet, and then he does this little speech where he talks about his life, and he's been in the service for 38 years or something like that, of which that he's maybe spent 10 months at home, and he's dedicated his life to the service, and then questions, well, what will will I be remembered for? What am I leaving behind? And it's a metaphor for the bridge. This bridge is where he's put his soul in, and he wants it to be recognized, because those bridges in India, they could last 600 years. And so there would be a plaque there with, under his direction, this bridge was built with English and other prisoners of war at the camp. So he's really talking about his legacy and what he'll be remembered for. And it moves from there quickly into a series of action sequences that occur, and you're really waiting for him to come up and find the plunger, the device. And he winds up getting into hand-to-hand combat with the young soldier who has been sent to work with them. And and then has a moment of realization after Mortar kind of knocks it out of him, has a moment of realization that, what have I done?
What have I done? Yeah.
Yeah. And the choice of those words, what have I done? What have we done? Oh my God, what should I do? What do I do? No, it's what have I done? Is that piece that kind of catches in his head. I will talk about this particularly in the brief 8-10 minute one scene podcast that I do around these films. So your thoughts about it? Had you seen any of those images before?
No.
Wow. Okay.
No, I had not. No, that was another, again, very dramatic point for me in the movie, where it's like it finally clicked in his head, like he finally realized, his pride had taken over in building the bridge, and he was really doing it for the wrong reason. And he finally realized, again, what he had done, because he was in charge and he made the men do that. And it was like his final moment of, oh my God, what have I done? Regret, so to speak. But it was too late. It was too late.
Yeah. So what are we doing next time?
Well, this is not meant as a punishment. It really is not. It is not. We're going to do Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte with Bette Davis.
So Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, and has Bette Davis in it, has Joseph Cotton, who I think is we eventually have to get to Citizen Kane, where Joseph Cotton plays a major role in there, and to see that film.
Do you remember what else he was in that we've already talked about?
Oh, yeah, Gaslight?
Gaslight, the very end.
Yeah. This was directed by Robert Aldrich. And when we talked about this film, you said, oh, I like Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. I like it better than Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. As it turns out, Robert Aldrich directed both of those. And so it might have been a Bette Davis decision on there. He's done a whole series of interesting films. His last film recorded was All the Marbles, Frisco Kid, The Choir Boys. These are in the 70s. He did The Longest Yard, the Burt Reynolds version from 1974. He did The Dirty Dozen, which was another kind of war film. Flight of the Phoenix, he did it right after he did Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte. And 2 years earlier, he did, in 1962, he did Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. So we're looking at a 1964 film, Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte. And this is a genre of black and white kind of thriller films. And there's a bunch of other films that fall into this category. And I will try and find the name for that genre as what people are calling that, or what I saw somebody call it when I was reading through some media stuff. I'm just going through his list of directorial stuff. All very cool things from it. So in this film, not only Joseph Cotten, but also Olivia de Havilland in the role. And Victor Bueno. We can have a whole discussion on Victor Bueno. He is an interesting actor, and there's all sorts of reasons why Hollywood at the time marginalized him to certain kind of roles, and we'll talk about that when we get to this. But I kind of went down a Victor Bueno rat hole one time to find out more about his story, and thought this was really fascinating and sad. Bruce Dern is in the film. Must be a very, very young Bruce Dern. George Kennedy is in the film. I have not seen it. So I don't see it as punishment, but I see it as an opportunity for me to kind of go someplace that I normally wouldn't go. Yeah, I'm going to watch that tonight. So this will be fun.
Look through it with your counselor lens on.
Yeah. I used to have this thing now, not to take offense about what I'm about to say, but I used to have this thing where it was like, I don't go to see movies that have too much psychology in them because it feels like work. You know, it's like, I don't want to go to the movies to work, but I will make that exception with this film.
No,
put my counselor.
It'll be pretty obvious. You won't have to work too hard. It's pretty.
I would avoid films like Aileen would say, why don't we go see this? And it's sort of like, no, that feels like it's too much of a human story for me to do. I want escapism. I want something like Bridge on the River Kwai. Something like that takes me to new places and places I haven't been. And so, yeah. So that kind of wraps it up for us with the show. Thank you, Cindy, for doing this. And for those of you who are watching this or listening to this, remember Fade to Chat. We try to do weekly episodes. You're taking a break next week, I think, from what I remember in terms of our...
No, I will be in town on Monday. Not leaving till Tuesday. So next Monday's
so
still
we'll be able
right.
to get the recording. Yeah. And that's cool. So we'll have the episode on Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte coming up next week from the time of release here. But thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us with Fade to Chat Golden Age Cinema. Remember, take a look at one scene, The Camera and the Couch. It's a 10-minute single discussion about some psychological aspect of the film that we just talked about with Fade to Chat. And guess what? We're going to talk about Alec Guinness's transformation and what happens when he becomes aware and says, what have I done? So we'll talk about the psychology of that, and again, to support Fade to Chat in terms of the things. Thank you. Contact us via email like Brian does at the podtalknetwork@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from listeners. Please subscribe. Even if you don't come back and see us again, I think you should, but please subscribe helps us just kind of feel good. We're not bringing in income from this. We're doing this out of the love of movies and for listeners and viewers like you. So I appreciate that. You can also visit the website, the podtalk.net, which has all the different shows that I produce and also the shows that I'm on, in great respect for the folks who have me on their shows as a panelist. So I appreciate that. Spread the word to other Golden Age cinema lovers, and we'll see you next time.